The first lesson in this module will provide an introduction and overview to the concept of diversity in education. Diversity refers to human qualities that are different from our own and those of groups to which we belong, but that are manifested in other individuals and groups. Dimensions of diversity include, but are not limited to, age, ethnicity, gender, physical abilities or qualities, race, sexual orientation, educational background, geographic location, income, marital status, military experience, parental status, religious beliefs, work experience, and job classification. Diversity as a concept focuses on a broader set of qualities than race and gender. In the context of the education setting, valuing diversity means creating a school and classroom environment that respects and includes differences, recognizing the unique contributions that individuals with many types of differences can make, and creating an environment that maximizes the potential of all students and teachers. Working effectively in a diverse environment helps prevent discrimination and promote inclusiveness. There is evidence that embracing diversity can lead to increased student engagement and productivity. It can enhance responsiveness to an increasingly diverse student body, improve relationships with the surrounding community, increase ability to cope with change, and expand the creativity. What is the difference between fairness and equality? Many people think that fairness means treating students in the same way. How well does treating everyone the same way work for a diverse student body? For example, when students have limited English language skills or reading proficiency, even though that limit might not impair their ability to learn, transmitting important information through lecture or chapter readings may not be an effective way of educating and communicating with them. While instructing all students may be seen as treating everyone the same, this approach may not communicate essential information to everyone who receives it. It is easy to see how a student who missed out on essential information might feel that the education process was unfair. A process that takes account of the diverse levels of English language and reading proficiency, for example, among the students might require extra time to make certain that everyone understands important information. Such efforts on the part of the teacher and school staff should be supported and rewarded as good practice for working with a diverse student body. When thinking about matters of diversity in the school setting, think about who we are, what we have learned, how we lead, and how we interact. Who we are as individuals includes our race, gender, age, ethnicity, physical considerations, religion, and sexual orientation. What we've learned includes thinking about educational background, experiences in the school and home, beliefs, family situations, and geographic background. How we lead refers to the way we learn, teach, share, accept, understand, innovate, and exhibit integrity. And how we interact in the school setting means showing accountability, appreciation, respect, empowerment, teamwork, openness, positive change, flexibility, opportunity, and inclusion for all students and staff. As we progress through the topic of diversity, we will discuss terminology important to diversity, disproportionality and overrepresentation, culturally responsive education and strategies, and issues of testing. The first term we would like to discuss under diversity is culture. What is culture, and why is it important? Culture is a system of shared beliefs, values, customs, behaviors, and artifacts that the members of a society use to interact with their world and with one another. So why do you think culture is important for educators and future educators to understand? Understanding culture is critical because our individual orientation is present in every interaction we make. A word of caution regarding overgeneralization about culture. It can never be said that just because a person or a child is from a certain ethnic group or culture will necessarily like a certain type of food or music or have certain values or beliefs. However, an awareness of culture and cultural background is helpful for a teacher because it embodies a historical component. If you understand a child's cultural background, you gain a useful perspective and hopefully an appreciation of some of the ideas and gifts that the child and his or her family may be able to bring to the school. Too often, we make assumptions about a person's beliefs or behaviors based on a single cultural indicator, particularly race or ethnicity, when in reality, our cultural identities are a complex weave of all the cultural groups we belong to that influence our values, beliefs, and behavior. Cultural identity is an ongoing process. As we are exposed to more and different sets of beliefs and values, we may choose to adopt ones that were not part of our original upbringing. A person may grow up on a rural farm, but choose not to stay there and instead live in an urban environment. Similarly, one might grow up in a poor family, but become more affluent as an adult and interact with others who are also more affluent. Growing up in a family where gender roles are predetermined, but enter the workforce and adjust their ideas about what are accepted roles for men and women. Many young adults are exposed to different political beliefs and values as they move through college and change their views from those in which they were raised. Why are these important? These are the contexts in which people find themselves creating the opportunity for change in values, feelings, beliefs, and behaviors. Individuals who shift cultures find themselves adopting new customs while retaining elements of their previous cultural experiences. Culture is broader than race and ethnicity. Gender, class, physical and cognitive abilities, religious and spiritual beliefs, sexual orientation, age, and other factors influence our cultural orientation. Unless we make an effort to learn about and understand the idea of culture and cultural influences on identity development, we may assume that our beliefs and values are normal, privileging our own cultural identities at the expense of those who hold different beliefs or values. Why does culture matter? As educators, we are committed to ensuring that all children can learn and achieve to the best of their ability. Misunderstandings about the role of culture in behavior, communication, and learning often lead to assumptions about the abilities of children to be successful in school. An awareness and understanding of the role of culture in the classroom and the different values and behaviors that may accompany culture can remove unintentional barriers to a child's success. Now that we have covered the basics of diversity and culture, the broader and underlying concepts of this topic, we will review some other important and related terminology. The first thing we will highlight are definitions of terms, and we'll provide some thoughts on these terms. Issues associated with multiculturalism and diversity can be controversial, and we have noticed that when these issues are discussed in regard to education, some people are prone to talk past each other instead of talking to each other. One reason this happens is because they define their terms differently. They can't communicate effectively because one person uses terms one way and another person uses terms to mean something different. So although we hope your understanding of issues presented in this module goes well beyond memorizing definitions, we would like to go over several terms of which we think you should have a good understanding so you can effectively communicate. The term macroculture is an important term. Macroculture is the core national culture which represents a shared culture, such as American individualism and independence, as well as the belief in equality of opportunity, free speech, and fair play, including equality under the law. Microculture, on the other hand, refers to distinct subcultures within the larger culture that retain their own unique characteristics. Another important concept is the concept of race, racial identity, and ethnicity. When people refer to race, they are usually referring to a local geographic or global human population distinguished as a more or less distinct group by genetically transmitted physical characteristics. In contrast, ethnicity, while related to race, refers to social traits that are shared by a human population. Some of the social traits often used for ethnic classification include nationality, religious faith, shared language, shared culture, and shared traditions. The federal government only recognizes 5 distinct racial groups: American Indian or Alaskan Native, Asian or Pacific Islander, Hispanic, Black, and White. Why these 5 groups are chosen and not others is well beyond the scope of this course, but suffice it to say, there are many reasons, including historic and political reasons. Remember that any categorization of racial background will be somewhat inaccurate due to the many variations and commonalities within and among groups. Multiculturalism refers to efforts to acknowledge and accept many different cultures based on the assumption that all cultures have value. Please remember that many individuals function in more than one culture. The book contrasts the idea of cultural pluralism, the concept of many distinct cultures operating side by side, with the idea of the melting pot, or the concept of different cultures mixing together and creating something new. The U.S. is a diverse country with people from many different cultural backgrounds, but the different cultures influence and change one another over time. In a very simple example, for a child from the middle class, white suburban America in the 1970s, a restaurant serving Mexican cuisine was very rare. Eating a fajita was something that was not in the experience of the mainstream culture. Today, almost everyone in America has tried a fajita, and restaurants serving Mexican cuisine are all over the place. Our point is that we don't think it is cultural pluralism or the melting pot, we think it's both. We do have distinct cultures in the U.S. today, but every time a new cultural group is introduced to the country, the mainstream culture changes. When one speaks of multicultural education, one is referring to education that is infused throughout the curriculum and values the customs, race, language, and ideas of all cultures, including cultural constructs such as race, gender, and disability. When one speaks of bilingual education, one is referring to an educational strategy for students whose first language is not English, where they receive instruction in their native language while also learning English. The book lists 6 approaches to bilingual education on page 94. We will take a closer look at these models later on in this module,